ever wish your day wasn't dictated by your health? Are you tired of being tired all the time, or is pain holding you back from enjoying your time with your family? Would you like to manage your symptoms holistically, but you just don't know where to begin? I am so excited that you're here. This podcast will help you understand how natural remedies work so you can relieve your symptoms and live a fuller life. My name is Penny. I'm an occupational therapist, past pharmaceutical rep, a mom, and a wife with a strong faith, and for 25 years, I battled through debilitating Crohn's disease. I took all the medicine and did all the surgeries that stole so much time with my family, but never truly healed me. I finally realized if I was going to survive this disease, I needed to open my stubborn eyes to alternative solutions. I researched how perfectly our bodies work with plants and a lifestyle that made my health less of a burden to my family and aligned so beautifully with my faith and my medical training. If you're ready to reclaim your life with holistic options that are easy to implement as a busy mom and provide relief that lasts, this is the podcast for you. Hey friends, quick pause because I have to tell you something time sensitive, and honestly, I don't want you to miss this. Lumbox is a red light therapy panel that I talked about in the red light episode with my friend Aubrey, and I use it at home and I talk about it all the time. It is 50% off today only. That's November 11th, 2025. And I said half off. These babies are expensive, and that is an incredible deal. It's the lowest price of the year, even better than Black Friday. So listen, red light therapy is wonderful. Red light helps your mitochondria do what God designed them to do, make energy, repair tissue, reduce inflammation. Your body is incredibly wise. Sometimes it takes just a little nudge of light. So here's what I notice when I use mine. My skin looks more alive again, not filtered, just awake. My stiff joints don't grip me as hard in the morning, and my energy and my mood, it gives me the ability to exhale when I didn't realize that I was holding my breath. So gifting idea, this is the one that they will actually use. Grab a Lumbox at 50% off before midnight on the 11th. Click the link in today's notes and you'll be directed straight to buy one that will give you 50% off. That little transparency, that link in the show notes is a partner link, which just means that your purchase helps support the podcast at no extra cost to you. I'm truly grateful. Hello, Becoming Natural fans. This is Penny. Welcome to episode 65. Glad to have you back. I hope everybody's having a great week. Today, we are going to talk about something so very ordinary that most of us walk right past it without a second thought, yet it carries a depth of wisdom we've largely forgotten. We're talking about something that lives quietly in most kitchen pantries, rarely gets a second glance, and yet carries more research than many supplements that everyone is taking today. And I actually thought to talk about this today because I have a child at school that's saying, oh gosh, everybody's getting sick. They're dropping like flies. My professors are sick. I don't want to get sick. And our go-to in our family when this is happening or when we start to feel like we're getting a virus is oregano. So today's episode is oregano oil benefits, 5 powerful reasons you can use it right now. So oregano, why is this common herb so powerful? It's not a supplement. It's not a protocol. It's not even a trend. It is just a leaf. And I love that because God so often hides strength in just the ordinary. Historically, people didn't separate food and health the way that we do now, which is a long rabbit hole that we should discuss in the future. Herbs were not alternative. They were normal. They were part of everyday life, woven into meals, passed down through kitchens, and trusted long before anyone needed a label or a warning sign. Somewhere along the way, our conversations around health shifted. We became very focused on what to avoid, what to cut out, what to fear, what might be harming us, what might be interacting with things that we have made ourselves. And while discernment matters, there is also wisdom in returning to the beginning, going back to the garden. Because from the very start, God designed variety, diverse plants, herbs, and foods working together to support the body in quiet, consistent ways, not just when we're sick, but every day. Food wasn't only fuel, it was provision. Today's episode is about remembering that. I want to say this up front, that today's episode is not about replacing doctors. It is not about fearing medicine. It is just simply about remembering that our bodies were designed with support systems and that food can be one of the first lines of defense before we get sick to prevent us from getting sick. Prevention before panic, wisdom before extremes. So we're going to talk about oregano as daily food, oregano oil as a short-term tool, when to use each, how to use them safely, such as in food, in steam, topical, what science actually supports, and some red flags that I really want you to hear. So oregano has been the go-to in our house for years. From the beginning of my dabbling with essential oils when I was still kind of testing the waters of this hippie world of natural remedies, I quickly discovered that when my little ones came home from preschool or Mother's Day out with those nasty green horns of drainage coming out their noses, oregano was to me, a miracle, and one that we depended upon heavily. Initially, I rubbed it on my boys' chests topically with a little coconut oil, and the next morning, no more green horns coming out their nose. It was an amazing gift. And in our house, with asthma and allergies and ear infections all the time, if one child had even an inkling of drainage, it meant that pretty soon all three would be sick and discovering infections. And then everybody would get an ear infection or a sinus infection. And then we'd go on antibiotics and all the things. It was a massive production when one child got sick. So discovering oregano oil truly changed our lives and maybe my life because it meant I wasn't up all night with the boys. But as they got older, they started to complain they didn't want oregano oil on their chests because their friends kept saying that it smelled like pizza in the room and they didn't want to admit that it was them. So I spared them the embarrassment and we shifted to diffusing it by their beds. So we would diffuse it by their bed at night when they slept, but even in high school or middle school, they would come home and not feel well. And I would close their door while they were studying and diffuse oregano oil in their room with them. It's unbelievable the difference that it made in their lives. So to this day, with my kids in college, they will diffuse oregano oil next to their bed. If they get a virus or even if they have a few friends that are sick, which is what's going on now with one of my kids. And I said, just put your oregano oil in. And he has a diffuser and he drops about 3 drops of oregano oil and he sleeps with it by his bed. It not only helps to squelch existing viral symptoms, but it also prevents the severity of symptoms or possibly, maybe non-medically terms here, but possibly even the virus at all when used in advance. Studies typically show that it can't prove that it manages the virus, but it certainly manages symptoms, which is all we care about when we want to feel better, right? So I'm not making medical claims by any stretch of the imagination, but when the sign of green drainage of one child usually meant weeks ahead of us with 3 kids catching eventually everything and then all the secondary infections and medicines that followed, we could be dealing with it for a couple of months. Lord help us if my husband or I caught it eventually. So why does oregano matter? What makes it such a big deal? Oregano has been used for centuries across Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cultures, not as an emergency medicine, but just as daily nourishment. And that matters because historically, like I said before, people didn't separate their food and health the way that we do now. Herbs were not the alternative solution. They were just part of their normal daily diet. My favorite quote by Anne Wigmore supports this case entirely. The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. I've said that many times before, but it is so, so true. Food has the power to support life or quietly work against it, depending on how we use it. And science supports this for oregano. Modern research has identified 2 key compounds in oregano. One is called carvacrol, which is Carvacrol, and the other one is thymol, Thymol. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. These compounds are responsible for many of oregano's supportive properties, especially in immune, digestive, and respiratory contexts. And here's something important. Oregano doesn't act like a sledgehammer and destroy everything in sight. It helps to create an internal environment that's less friendly to the unwanted guests in our body. And you may want to go back to the very beginning of the podcast. I'm not sure what episode it was, but we talked about essential oils and how they worked in our bodies and how valuable they were and how they didn't kill everything in sight. They're smart. They're created by God, so they know what to remove and what to repair. It's amazing, really. But when you don't use it as a sledgehammer and it allows an internal environment that's less friendly to unwanted guests, meaning it allows them not to survive in that environment, that is very different from killing everything, like our modern medicine of antibiotics and things like that. So multiple lab studies show that oregano oil and its compounds inhibit the growth of certain bacteria and fungi in vitro, meaning in controlled lab settings. So that's not in humans, but it leads us to believe that it can do the same things in humans. That doesn't automatically mean the same effect happens in our body at kitchen level, but it helps explain why oregano has been used traditionally for digestion, respiratory support, and food preservation for centuries. This is about supporting the system, not making medical claims. So oregano as food, as prevention, not pressure to calm the crazy that's going on in our body. This is where I want to spend the most time because this is the safest, most overlooked, and most sustainable way to use oregano or any herb for that matter. We use it in our cooking. We use it in our daily lives. We use a variety of herbs and many things that came from the garden in order to keep our bodies healthy. Our diets, as we all know, have gotten so far from a garden and so full of preservatives that are just eating away at our longevity and our lifestyle. So, fresh or dried oregano used in cooking supports your digestion. It adds antioxidants that reduce that oxidative stress, which we've talked about before. It gently supports immune balance over time. We know what that means to keep a good immune system. And it encourages a healthy bile flow. So I wanted to go down a rabbit hole with the healthy bile flow because that's something we've never talked about before, and we've talked about the other three things. So we're gonna take a little sidestep here and talk about bile. I think we've covered all the other things well. So, what does it mean to encourage healthy bile flow, and why does that matter? So, first of all, for you non medical people out there, let's talk about what bile actually is. Bile is a digestive fluid that is made by your liver and stored in your gallbladder. Many of us have heard about people who have had their gallbladders removed, and it is quite unfortunate because it serves a very great purpose. But its main job of the bile is to break down fats so that your body can actually use those fats to support you. So if you have no bile, fats pass through poorly digested, and then it causes problems downstream. Everything in our body, we have to fix the upstream so that we can continue to fix the downstream. But if we have problems upstream, we're going to have problems downstream. So, what happens when your bile flow is sluggish? When bile isn't flowing well, people often experience bloating after meals, especially fatty meals, greasy or floating stools, constipation or irregular stools. You got to know by now that being a Crohn's girl, I don't mind talking about the poop. So, you got to look at your poop. That tells so much about your health. Nausea after eating, poor absorption of fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, or feeling heavy or uncomfortable after meals. You can be eating good fats and still not benefit from them if your bile flow is weak. So, why herbs like oregano come into the conversation? So, certain herbs are considered cholagogues. I'm going to spell that for you. CHOLAGOGUES. So, cola, like COLA, and then gogs, similar to dogs, but with a G. So cholagogues or choleretics, CHOLERETIC, choleretics, meaning they gently stimulate bile production or they encourage bile to move more efficiently. And oregano has traditionally been used in this category, especially in Mediterranean diets where meals are richer in the good fats like olive oil, meats, cheeses. And we all know, we hear about the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet tends to be the most healthy, and it seems that everybody is leaning into this Mediterranean diet phase because the people of the Mediterranean are somewhat healthy, way healthier than us. This doesn't mean that oregano treats gallbladder disease. I just want to say that. But it does mean that it supports a normal digestive process. And when that normal digestive process breaks down, we break down. So it supports the digestive process, especially when it's used as food. And before we go into detail about bile itself, so exciting, common herbs considered, cholagogues and choleretics that you may have heard of that are in addition to oregano are dandelion, root, and leaf. And I love that because it's one of the most well-known, and truly it's a weed that's used as daily nourishment. And others are artichoke leaf, milk thistle, turmeric, ginger, peppermint, fennel. What I love is that many of the herbs that support the bile are things that humans have eaten for centuries. Bitter greens, roots, spices. This wasn't a protocol, it was a pattern. And bitterness itself is a signal to the digestive system. And on top of this, these are all things that came in and out of season at different times. I think it's important for us to realize that, like I said, it wasn't a pattern or a protocol. I mean that they were seasonal. So they had this variety of food in their lives when they were eating straight from the garden because they ate what was available to them during the specific season. So variety is the key. You don't need all of these at once, and you don't need to supplement all of these. But a rotating variety, as though your seasons are coming in and out of bitter greens, warming spices, herbs in your meals, it often does absolutely more than one, quote, magic pill. And I have noticed bitters being offered more lately at restaurants on the menus as tonics after dinner, or maybe I'm just paying attention more, but my husband likes them. And holy Hannah, they're bitter. But this is precisely what people mean when they talk about bitters. Bitters are actually really good for you if you can stomach them. And I'm a picky eater, so it's very hard. I take 1 sip, 2 sips, but their digestive bitters are blends of those bitter herbs, many of which are cholagogues and or choleretics, like oregano. Their job isn't to treat disease. Their job is to wake up digestion. And in my Crohn's connected brain, I kind of relate bitters to taking digestive enzymes before or after a meal. That's what I think our modern day world has resorted to is we'll pop a digestive enzyme, which works, but this is the natural way of doing it. When your tongue tastes something bitter, it actually sends a signal to the brain that says, wake up, food is coming, get ready. And so that naturally sends triggers to the saliva, to the stomach acid, to the digestive enzymes, to the bile production and the flow. It's a reflex built into our body because our body is just beyond brilliant. And when people take bitters before or after meals, they're often supporting that bile flow without ever even using that language. Before modern digestive age, people ate bitter greens on the regular. Herbs were part of their meals regularly. After dinner tonics were common. Bitters weren't a wellness trend. They were part of their daily rhythm. They knew that they needed them to digest. When I say they, ancient people with non-preservative foods. But bitters can help us today because modern diets are often low in bitter flavors. They're heavy in processed foods and they're high in fat, but low in digestive signaling. They're not telling our bodies to wake up and break these things down. Bitters can help with bloating, feeling uncomfortably full, fat, heavy meals, mild constipation related to sluggish digestion. These are all things that we need, and it's all completely natural. It's all built into our world, into our garden, into our system. It's so befuddling to think how perfectly we were created to use the plants that were in the garden for our health. Bitters are not for everyone. For one, they're bitter, like I said, and they're powerful. Bitters are not about forcing digestion. They are about reminding the body how digestion was designed to work. So I think it is perfectly fine to take just a sip at a time until you get used to drinking bitters because I'm telling you, if you've never had them, you're in for a shock. But bitterness is one of the flavors God built into creation. We have simply bred it out in favor of sweet, self-included. I would much rather have sugar than I would bitter. So if we reintroduce it gently through herbs and greens and spices, we're not adding something new at all. We're actually reminding our body of something old. So why does bile matter beyond digestion? So here's the part that most people don't really realize. Bile also helps with detoxification. Hello. The liver packages waste into that bile to be excreted. That's its way of getting the crud out of our liver and getting it out of our body. It's putting it in the bile so it gets through the digestive process and out our body. It helps with gut balance. Healthy bile discourages the overgrowth of unwanted microbes. It balances our hormones. Excess hormones are excreted through bile. Amazing. Blood sugar stability. So if you have a poor fat digestion, that can affect your satiety and glucose response. Bile alone has so much value to keeping our body balanced and disposing our body of waste, simply reminding us how intricate our bodies are created and impossible to think we are not divinely created by a complex and detailed God. Because if we're talking about bile and how important bile is, I mean, think about all the other amazing things in our bodies that are so perfectly created for our fearfully and wonderfully made bodies. So here we're just talking about eating oregano. We haven't even hit the part about using it as a potential healing agent or symptom reliever. This is not even medicine mode. This is just faithful daily nourishment on a regular basis. So you can use oregano in common things such as tomato sauces and soups and roasted vegetables, marinated salad dressings. Food can be supportive without being obsessive. And sometimes the most power in good health is just simply consistency. So one common way that people like to get oregano in their body is through oregano tea. It's a perfect middle ground option between those bitters and then going to the other end of just having oregano in your food. So if you feel something coming on, you can make an oregano tea. It's helpful for digestive discomfort. If you have a meal that you want to settle your stomach, have oregano tea. It's great for seasonal immune support. It's good for early cold symptoms. Like I said, that's what we use all the time in our diffuser. It's great for gentle respiratory comfort. It's not harsh. It's not aggressive. This is something I'd reach for before escalating to, oh my gosh, we're full out sick. So oregano contains antioxidants, like we said, that help neutralize those free radicals, molecules that contribute to inflammation and cellular stress. That doesn't mean oregano treats disease. It simply means that it supports the environment so your immune system is allowed to do its work. That distinction matters. And I've talked about this many times, and I'm just going to summarize it really quick. But when I talk about going on that yeast diet, the whole idea of that diet was eating the simplest form of food possible, lean protein and vegetables that made my body break down food the easiest it can, because our body takes care of itself in priority order, and priority for our body is breaking down food. So if our body uses all of its little energies called ATPs, it sits there and tries to break down processed food and high fat food. It doesn't have any extra energy to go to the rest of our body and heal what needs to be healed. But if we eat really simple food that's basic food that God made, our body has no problem breaking it down. That's why we feel so good when we eat that way. So it frees up all those little energies to run out to the rest of the body and heal what needs to be healed. Ideally, it's supporting the environment of our body so our immune system can work. And so that's why so many things heal when you go on that yeast diet, or you go on a diet where you just eat simple, pure foods, because you're putting yourself in a position that allows your body to work the way it is supposed to work. The yeast diet didn't heal me. It was the fact that I was putting my body in a position where it could do the healing that it needed to do, that it had not been allowed to do for all the time that energy was spent on breaking down food. Does that make sense? I hope that's clear, because that is a big aha moment. So, oregano oil is a strong tool for a short season, is when it becomes more medicine minded. So, let's talk about oregano oil, because this is where I want us to slow down just a little bit and absorb the whole process. Oregano oil is highly concentrated. This is not oregano like you have in your seasoning jar in your cabinet. This is an oil, and it is not the same as oregano in your food, and is not meant for daily long term use. Potential uses for short term is for acute immune stress, temporary digestive imbalance, short respiratory support during illness. Oregano oil should be considered a tool, not a lifestyle. And this is what I love about all the training I'm getting as a health coach, is that we don't need to be supplementing for life. We need to find out what we're deficient in or what we need right now, take care of it, and then be done. You don't need to ever be on any supplements for life, because once you repair your body and get it in a functioning order with the proper vitamins and nutrition and get it going in the right direction, then your body should kick in because it knows what it needs to do. So there are registered clinical trials exploring these compounds, which tells us the science community sees potential. Here's a fascinating bridge between natural and conventional medicines. What I find fascinating is that compounds from oregano, like thymol and carvacrol, are already used in everyday products. Mouthwash, toothpaste, food preservation, even some medical and agricultural settings use it. This tells us these are not fringe ideas. I am not cuckoo over here talking about oregano. They are familiar tools, just used in different ways. So, for instance, if you've ever used Listerine antiseptic mouthwash, you've used thymol. Oral care products are the biggest and most mainstream category for using these products. Antiseptic mouthwash, some toothpaste, dental rinses used in clinical settings. Medicated creams or ointments in a low concentration have thymol. They're used for antifungal preparations, especially for skin and nails. And some natural deodorants use it for odor control and antimicrobial action. So, why thymol? Just like we said, it's antimicrobial, it reduces plaque forming bacteria, it supports your gum health. Now, carvacrol is less visible on labels, but widely used behind the scenes as a natural food preservative. It's used to inhibit bacterial growth in meats, dairy, and packaged foods. It's actually being studied as an alternative to synthetic preservatives, which brings me great joy to hear that. Oregano compounds help create an environment where spoilage organisms cannot thrive. Same as inside our bodies, right? Sound familiar? It's added to livestock feed as a natural antimicrobial. It's used to support gut health and reduce your pathogen load. It's studied as an alternative to routine antibiotics in agriculture. Ding, 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 ding. Is that not amazing? So, even though we can't claim that it helps humans, the studies aren't there to say it helps humans, but it is being studied as an alternative to routine antibiotics in agricultural communities. That is huge. That's amazing. It's used as antifungal creams, skin cleansers, natural antimicrobial formulations studied for antimicrobial mechanisms. This is not about choosing herbs instead of modern products. It's about recognizing that many modern products are already borrowing from our garden. I love these examples because it reminds us nature often comes first. Medicine sometimes isolates what nature has already provided for us, and the two worlds do not have to be enemies. Natural does not mean that you're weak, and pharmaceuticals doesn't mean that you're evil. Wisdom is knowing what tool fits in the moment. So thymol and carvacrol are already trusted. I am not French. Some sources even frame it up and say that up to 40% or more of all of our drugs being directly or indirectly derived from plants. That's right. 40% or more of our drugs, of our pharmaceuticals are directly or indirectly derived from copying a plant molecule because they know that they work and they cannot patent those plants. So they have to make these products that they can patent. I'm going to attach a few scientific studies at the end of this so you can grab them in your show notes, but they are used in controlled and targeted ways. Food level oregano, it is very important for me to tell you, is not the same as an essential oil. And an essential oil is not the same as industrial use oregano oil. It is vital to know which form fits the moment because they are all different levels of concentrations. So you might be wondering, how quickly does oregano actually work? And this depends on what you mean by work. So I would say that symptoms and comfort level is the most important. So the steam inhalation, when I put those diffusers by my kids' beds or my bed, it can help within minutes just simply by opening up airways. I actually can add oregano oil, to me is what I see the most difference in, but you can add eucalyptus or you can add other oils that are known for helping sinuses and drying up those sinusy type symptoms, and you can use them all together at once. Tea can soothe your digestion or your throat discomfort actually quite quickly. The heat helps. For illness duration, there's limited human evidence that oregano shortens the viral illness. Like I said, most benefits appear to be supportive, not curative, which, I mean, that doesn't disappoint me at all. It's clarifying. All that matters is how you feel and how you can manage your symptoms to outlast the virus, right? So if it takes care of my symptoms and I feel better, but the virus is still in me, that's fine. I want my symptoms to be managed so I can continue functioning in life. As with anything, there are red flags and cautions I want to make sure that everyone is aware of, and this really matters. So please hear this as care, not fear. But pregnancy, always, nothing is ever tested on a pregnant woman. So oregano oil in supplemental doses should be avoided. Blood thinners, oregano may increase your bleeding risk by thinning the blood. That's something that you should talk to your doctor about. GI irritation, higher doses can cause heartburn, nausea, and diarrhea. And that is, we'll get to that soon, but that is essentially because oregano oil is a very powerful, very strong and intense oil. It's called a hot oil. So there's ways to alleviate those things. But if you have an ulcerated stomach like I did, or a really bad GI issue, you might avoid oregano oil going through your stomach. You might choose to use it topically. And of course, if you have an allergy, caution if you're sensitive to any of the mint family plants. Essential oil safety right here. So never apply undiluted oregano oil to your skin or to any mucous membranes. Oregano oil is called a hot oil, like I said, because its compounds are very strong and they can irritate tissue if it's not diluted. So you can slow that burn or absorption by adding a carrier oil to dilute it, kind of like coconut oil or olive oil. Water will not help. Don't think, oh gosh, I got to wash it off. I'm burning. I got water. This is oil. Oil needs oil. So adding that carrier oil will merge with it and the oil will actually dilute it and it will make the burning go away. Adding that carrier oil will reduce the concentration of that irritating compound. It slows that skin exposure so the tissue isn't overwhelmed, and it prevents any sort of chemical burns or blistering if you're extra sensitive to that oil. The whole point here is making sure that you dilute it first, and if you dilute it while you're applying it, you should be golden, but always test it on a small spot of your body first. Dilution doesn't just make it more comfortable, it makes it safer. So it's important to note that if your body says no, even after dilution, you need to listen to this. We are teaching ourselves this whole time, this whole podcast, to start listening to our bodies, listening to the positive and listening to the negative. And this is a good place to make sure that you listen. God speaks through wisdom and warning. I believe that food was designed to partner with the body, not replace discernment. So definitely listen to any warning signs that your body has given you. Oregano reminds me that prevention doesn't have to be loud, not as a miracle cure, not as a replacement for wisdom or medicine, but as a part of the quiet daily design that helps the body stay resilient. That strength can be gentle. That consistency often matters more than intensity. I'll say that again. Consistency matters more than intensity. We can relate that to exercise. And maybe that's the lesson that we have today, is to look again at what's already in your kitchen and trust that God did not waste a single leaf when he created them. But now that we know how great oregano oil is, how do we know how to choose a quality oregano oil, and why does that matter? And this part is huge. I always have to pause here because this really, really matters, because many people will say, oh, I tried it and it didn't work. Well, did you use a quality oil? Was it organic? Was it third-party tested? Was it in an amber glass bottle? Was it organic? Did I say that already? There's so many variables in finding a quality product, and we've talked about this with anything I've ever discussed about any oil I've ever discussed. Number one, it should always be in a glass, amber glass bottle. Glass because it does not take on any of the plastic. The plastic can melt down because the essential oils are so strong. Amber glass protects it from the sun. You want to make sure it's USDA organic because it does have certain certifications that it will pass for that. There are many things to consider. Not all oregano is created equal, like not any oil is created equal. And this is where people get into trouble, not because oregano oil is bad, but because quality and labeling really matter. And unfortunately, all farmers, factories, and producers do not care as much about quality as they do the bottom dollar. Like everything we discuss, it bears repeating. So first, know what you're actually buying. There are 3 different things people often confuse, and this is quite confusing. Number one, there is culinary oregano oil, which is an infused oil. There's oregano essential oil, and then there's oil of oregano supplements that typically come in capsule form. They are not interchangeable, but a bottled labeled oregano oil could mean very different things depending upon how it's made. And unfortunately for marketing, even though those aren't interchangeable, they change them and mess them up all the time. So what you want to look for quality markers. So when choosing an oregano oil for supportive use, here are the basics that I look for. And I've actually attached some options at the end if you don't like to read labels, but oh my Lanta, I read labels forever tonight. So I hope that you'll, just use those because I did work really hard to find some options that were not necessarily the product that I use, and because I'm sure there's other good products out there. But number one, you want to look at the botanical name. Look for Oreganum vulgare, Origanum vulgare. That matters because not all oregano species have the exact same compound profile, and that is the kind of oregano that you want. Oreganum vulgare. Number two, you want to make sure that it lists the carvacrol content when it's listed on the bottle. So a quality oregano oil will usually list a carvacrol percentage, often 60 to 75%. If it does not list carvacrol at all, that's a red flag. Move on to the next one. That doesn't mean it's higher is better, but transparency certainly matters. Number three, you want to make sure that you read it as diluted versus undiluted. So high quality oregano oil is often pre-diluted in a carrier oil, like we said, like olive oil or coconut oil. That's not a weakness. It's responsible formulation, actually. And if it's undiluted essential oil, it should clearly say so and include guidance as for how you should dilute it when you use it on your body. Number four, you want to make sure that there's third-party testing or sourcing transparency. So look for brands that explain how it is extracted. Is it steam distillation? Is it cold pressed? Share the sourcing details. Where is it from? Where did they grow it? Where did they bottle it? Did they use fertilizers? Did they use pest control? Avoid vague marketing language. And you want clarity, not hype. And it's hard. It's really hard. So sometimes you have to go on a wing and a prayer, but if you can nail those basic things, then you're probably getting a pretty decent product. But when you're going to ingest these things, you want to make sure that you're getting a high quality product. And of course, make sure that it comes in a clear or an amber glass bottle. That glass is very important. So red flags that you want to avoid: important and calm, not scary, but be cautious if the label does not list the plant species. If it just says oregano, there's no mention of carvacrol, you want to make sure that that is there because that is the vital piece of oregano, that and the thymol. But carvacrol is what is always listed as a percentage. If the product encourages daily long-term use, that's not for you. You don't want that. This is not meant for long-term use. This is meant for, I'm getting a virus, I'm feeling bad, I need short-term use. If it suggests internal use without clear guidance on how to take it internally, you definitely want guidance in that regards. The marketing promises cures or guarantees. Clearly, they can't promise cures or guarantees. So you want to make sure it's not claiming that because that's just unethical marketing. A good product doesn't need dramatic claims. So where people typically get quality oregano oil, now that we know all about it and how great it is, generally speaking, reputable herbal companies, brands known for essential oil transparency. Online can be totally fine since we buy everything online. I'm the world's worst or perhaps best at buying things online because I hate to shop. But if the company is transparent, I would certainly be cautious If you are buying something on eBay, as I've heard many stories of receiving bottles that are very diluted, or they're not even what they claim at all. It is amazing the links that people will go to make a product look new and unopened, including adding plastic around the lid. That happened to one of my friends. It was terrible. So a simple rule is if you can't tell what's in it or how it's been made, keep looking. There's plenty of options. Just keep on moving. So I did some searching to provide multiple sources for you in the show notes. And one thing I want to call attention to is that oil of oregano and oregano oil are used interchangeably in marketing. So even though they're not the same, what I made sure I looked at was that carvacol percentage. I wanted as few ingredients as possible in the product. I wanted to make sure it was in an amber glass bottle. I wanted to make sure it was USDA organic. So make sure that they have clearly stated the dilution, make sure that they're not marketing a strength without context. That's why reading labels actually matters more than just the name on the box. Oregano essential oil is basically the concentrated extract. Oil of oregano usually means that extract has already been diluted in a carrier oil and is sold as drops or capsules. And for anything to be sold in a capsule, it does have to be diluted because otherwise the oil will just melt right through those capsules. So it's the same plant, just very different strengths. And as I read labels, there were some very popular brand names that I just really didn't like the added ingredients in the capsules, or they weren't USDA organic. There's multiple reasons. So I have offered suggestions that I use or ones that actually look good to me, but certainly read the labels before you purchase anything to be sure it is held to the highest of standards. You can buy whatever you want. Just make sure that you know what you buy and why you're looking at those certain reasons for buying a good quality oil. And that is not just oregano oil, that is across the board all the time. So if you do decide to use oregano oil, the quality of the product matters, not just potency, but transparency in sourcing and active content. And in those examples that I included of reputable options people commonly choose, they range from enteric-coated capsules to liquid drops to put over food, or you can put them in a capsule of your own at home, which many people do. I do. You can buy vegetarian capsules. I guess I should probably include that too, or in a diffuser. And I put a few options on a diffuser. Oh my goodness, that was a whole nother rabbit hole because you want to make sure that your diffuser is either ceramic or glass or at the very minimum BPA free, because if you're diffusing these oils that can, eat through plastic, you want to make sure that they're not diffusing plastic and putting all that out into your air. So I included a few suggestions for a good diffuser. Always remember to dilute appropriately and use them as short-term support, not daily forever, especially internally. So here's what I want to make sure that you hear. The goal isn't to find the strongest oregano oil. The goal is to find a trustworthy oil and use it wisely. You don't need it often and you don't need it forever, but I promise you, you will not regret having it on hand for the day that you need it. And I have loaned oil out to friends that are like, oh my gosh, I need that oregano oil. Can I borrow some? So as we wrap up, I keep coming back to a picture from scripture that feels especially fitting for today. So Revelation 22:2 tells us that the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. But then Ezekiel 47:12 says, the prophet describes trees growing along a river, trees that don't wither, that bear fruit constantly, just a beautiful vision. And then he says something so simple yet so profound, that their fruit will be for food and their leaves for healing. That's Ezekiel 47:12. This is so powerful to me because Ezekiel is writing about a similar verse in Revelation hundreds of years before Revelation even occurred. Yet he describes the same theme: trees, food, leaves, healing with ongoing provision, not a one-time rescue. So healing here is not framed as emergency medicine. It is sustained nourishment. And I love the order of that. Food first, healing flowing out of nourishment. We don't have to fear our food. We don't have to turn every meal into medicine, but we can choose variety, simplicity, faithfulness, trusting that God built support into creation long before we ever needed a label for it. Sometimes the most powerful things are not dramatic. They're consistent. Just a steady provision. Daily nourishment leads to support and resilience, which leads to restoration. The Bible began in a garden, and Ezekiel, we see that garden imagery again, trees that feed and leaves that restore it, tells me that prevention and provision were always a part of God's design. Oregano shows up quietly in meals, in kitchens, in daily rhythms, just like Ezekiel's trees. So today, let's look again at what's already been given and to remember that provision was always intentional and provision was never an afterthought. I hope you have a great day. I hope you learned something wonderful today about oregano oil and that you'll use it to save your family this season, as it feels like all the the bugs are coming out. And if you felt like this was meaningful, please pass it along to someone who can benefit, because I love sharing it. And the only way that I advertise is just by word of mouth. So I appreciate anybody that you can hand it off to that might find some benefits. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, hit that follow button, leave a 5-star review if you're so willing, and help spread the message of Becoming Natural by sharing it with a friend. Check out the resources in the show notes and join the email list to stay on top of all the latest and greatest happenings at Becoming Natural as we roll out exciting new things while we grow. Until next time, take those baby steps to a more natural life, and always give yourself grace. Progress, not perfection, is the goal. See you next week. Before we jump in, I want to share a resource that I trust for those moments when your body is asking questions and you want real answers, not more guessing. EquiLife offers simple at-home functional lab testing, things like minerals, gut health, hormones, and inflammation, with results that don't just give you data, but clear action steps so you know what to do next. And when supplements are a part of that picture, their formulas are clean, carefully tested, and designed to support the body, not overwhelm it. I do partner with EquiLife, and if you'd like to explore, you can find everything at becomingnatural.com/EquiLife. That's EquiLife.